and thank you all for coming. We're going to possibly move through this a little quickly. Some of it's our time, but I think we're going to be fairly good. What I want to do, and part of it is just the number of people here, is to let you know that when we had decided to do the launch, this was actually back in the spring, is that we committed to this year and felt like the first thing to do was just to kind of talk about race and racism and what I'm referring to gray matters just as a starting point. Part of having a public presentation like this, you never know who's going to show up, don't know where their baseline is, don't know literally how much we need to do as background. I think that for me in starting this, I actually just taught right before I came here my graduate seminar on race and gender theory. So I could be pulling from the critical race theory book, I could be pulling from my intersectionality book, our Whiteness on the Border, Sexual Fantasies, Massacre of Dreamers, which I thought is very poignant in that this text is actually from 1970s, Massacre of Dreamers. But for me, what was important, and I think what we've committed to as the center, as a land-grant institution also here at CSU, is how do we serve our communities? So at some level, we can have these intellectual discourses amongst one another, yet what I decided to pick for today's work is to really look at what's the public discourse out there around these topics, and how is it that the center, through the research in which we've already done, let alone research in which we're going to continue to do, attends to the public discourse. I think at times we've even been in our own situations where it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like if we could just have conversations with people. Well, one of the things that we're doing in our current decade is everything's out there. It's like all over the place. So I think it's more than just how do we understand this, how is it that we seek to reach people to understand it? So I did in some ways a very basic capturing is what the language I would use of some things that are out there around race, a couple things on racism, and then more so this gray matters, because I think it's the spaces in which most of the work in which we do is going to end up existing. What I'm asking for initially is from you is to listen. And I'm bringing this up much more significantly as an ask, because what I've often seen in even a lot of this public discourse, and what I mean public discourse, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blogs, all this stuff where it's just literally saturated, is that, folks may be hearing, but there isn't quite the listening that's going on. And I intentionally highlighted this. It's meaning. What are people meaning by what they say? And that's what we're seeking to capture. I think a number of folks that are doing this research is that we continue to really push with literally concentrate so that your brain can get meaning from words and sentences versus, again, the adages of hearing. Can you hear? Here is that you might get some things, but you're missing meaning. And for me, the example that I use at some level to illustrate this is the golden rule. And how many of you, who wants to tell me what the golden rule is? Yes, sir. Treat others as you would like to be treated. That if we truly did that, if I was just hearing you, I would treat you in the ways in which you want to be treated. You would treat me how you want to be treated. But do I really want to be treated how you want to be treated, right? So to hear the meaning of that is really to, again, in the spirit of kindness and caring and this kind of thing, the meaning of it, and I switch it, is like, treat others how they wish to be treated, right? And then that's where we make some of this shift. And again, I think it's a simple one, but I would go to the spirit of meaning of the golden rule. I wouldn't want to be treated how other people want to be treated. It's like, I don't like that kind of beer. Right? It's like my go-to this year, talking about beer. But that to me is just a quick example of we need to listen. And I'm going to bring it up more because I think there's been a number of examples that have been out there where people are engaging in racial justice and getting slammed and getting critiqued and it's like, come on, let's hear their meaning. So that is my one ask as we go through this today. I'm going to start with talking about race. And again, I do race and then racism. Know that these are very distinctive bodies of understanding that people live. In the critical race theory book, I talk to the grad students like, what's the main takeaway about race? Is race is real. Okay? So I'm not here to talk about whether it's biologicalized and social constructions and so forth, and then there's all kinds of answers. I can give you those if you want. We can talk about that. But one of the most significant things is race is real. I also start very intentionally with this slide from literally racialized people and people who live race lives. It is red power, it's black girl magic, it's Latino pride, it's history, ancestry, families, traditions. So we're not talking about racism, that's a different conversation. And I even pulled some other evidence, again, this is popular discourse, on how is it that folks actually see race and how do they live that. So very easily, these are the you-knows, and some of you might actually become familiar with it as soon as I start reading them. Examples of the you-knows that are out there that say race is real for people of color in meaningful ways. Because if you go on the line, you can find out, you know you were born or raised black when. There are 11 signs you grew up in an African household. 26 pictures that perfectly capture what it's like growing up black. 10 reasons you know you're a black mom. You're growing up black is a hashtag on Twitter. 21 black mama sayings that we grew up hearing. Like this is part of that public discourse. And I'm saying this because people do make and have identity here. It's the same thing, pretty much the dominant populations in the United States. So you can look at 27 signs you were raised by an Asian immigrant parents. You know you're half Asian. You know you're Asian if, part 1, part 2, part 3. You're growing up Asian is another hashtag. I place these here. I'm not saying that these are intentionally accurate. It is looking at the fact that this is a public engagement with the way in which race happens in people's lives. And I'm doing this because one of the things that happens is that people want to discount race with the adages of like, we're all the same, you know? And that even that race is, in another category, used to oppress and discriminate, certainly, biological roots, social roots. This is the hip thing that's going on now in terms of take your DNA. And they say even in this paper that, you know, there's difficulty in acknowledging ancestry, ethnicity, and identity, and race are complex labels that result both from visible traits, such as skin color, and from cultural, economic, geographic, and social factors. So we know that we live these complexities is part of what we're also trying to highlight. And there's some different videos that we're going to actually show in that, but I wanted to just, again, very basic, is that we do a disservice if we think race is only used for racism to oppress, because there's identity and meaning that also happens in that. And literally that was the two points that I wanted to start from in just understanding race. But we're going to move to literally a way in which race then gets located in difference. So I have for you literally these celebrated narratives about race being located in difference. So I pulled this one from Bill Nye recently. And again, who's Bill Nye? Science guy, okay? So he's this, again, that's where I said he's this celebrated narrative that at times we go to is like Bill Nye, he's this awesome guy who's going to talk to us literally about how is it that we operate in this world. And this is the quote that he pulled, that he actually says in this. He says, "We are all of one species. Color of our skin is just a consequence of ultraviolet light, latitude, and climate. We are much more alike than we are different. We all came from Africa. We're made of the same stardust, and we live and die on the same planet." So this is, again, commencement. Everybody's cheering, yay, 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 you know. We are all of one species. And again, this wasn't a commencement speech. So part of the work for me is then to look at, again, this failed recognition of the fact that even when we recognize difference, this whole idea of like we're all more alike than we are different, for me in part is to look at, well, you do realize that we're 96% similar to the great ape species. We're 96%, that's a heck of a lot more similar than different, but that 4%, right? So it is one of those in terms, and I brought this up in part because that, you know, despite those similarities in human and chimp genomes, the scientists have identified some 40 million differences amongst the 3 billion DNA molecules or nucleotides in each genome. So part of this for me in terms of doing research is how do you present data, right? He's presenting you this kind of classic data that we're more similar than we're different, but the work that we do is to look at, well, what does that data truly then represent if that in those differences, there's 40 million differences. And again, there was this big push in this work in some ways to silence the conversation about race. Know that that's the effort there, is to silence this conversation. And a number of undergrad students will also know this is like this real big push to be colorblind, so forth, those kind of things. So that is where I had sought to use that as literally one of the examples. The other big thing that I wanted us to be able to recognize is that in this discussion of race, particularly in the US, that it really isn't, again, if you were paying attention to particularly a number of the things that were happening this summer, is that it's a production of whiteness. That race isn't just merely about how you're identifying different populations, but that racism then comes from that because of that production of whiteness, in which we can see performed through U.S. nationalism, U.S. capitalism, U.S. Christianity, at times as referenced in some of our texts, U.S. nativism. We're talking about literally this way in which somehow we identify who we are through whiteness. One of the things that's important for me is that the construction of race, the Bill Nye, some of these folks, in terms of when they construct race, they deny literally this location of whiteness. What's important for us to understand about whiteness isn't that it just simply says something about race. It also then speaks to gender, it speaks to sexuality, it speaks to age. All that comes from that root of whiteness, which has become foundational to our racialization in this country. So this then looks at how we are literally set up in binary differences that gets us to racism, that gets you to sexism. And again, some of it for your time I'm going to have to just talk about, and we'll see if I can end up showing you even some of these clips. Contemporary racism. I have a slide here next of literally an image that was being shared like 4 days ago, because the Cleveland Indians were on a baseball winning streak. They were sharing this image, literally, of a Native person. And again, it's this huge caricature of a Native person that's literally running with a headdress on saying, "We're streaking." All right? And this is one of those where it looks like it's something that should have been maybe from the 1960s, but it's on literally all over Facebook. It's on people literally shooting out Instagram photos like, yes, Cleveland Indians, we're streaking. But it's literally a picture of an indigenous person, a Native person, again, a caricature of that. He's working on it. I can actually show you it and pass it around. This is what it looks like. So again, this is like, I don't know what cartoon it would have been, but that's what it looks like. That's the one that's going around right now. So I'm showing you the public discourse of racism and that production of racism that's being ignored, and it's that stuff that's out there. People like, hey, I just love my team. This is just being about pride and being literally loyal. In that, so the other one that I pulled, again, is another demonstration of this public way in which racism is happening and people are even paying attention to it more, is that, so this was a Twitter, something happened there, in which there was a clothing company that now has decided, in some ways, this ironic kind of flip of literally black identity, is that they have made black T-shirts. And the black T-shirts, literally, they'll say, one says a strong black woman, the other one says black girl magic, the other one is like unapologetically black, melanin and mascara. I don't know. Okay, but one of the things that the person said is tired of, I'm just tired of it, because it's mostly white people wearing the black T-shirts. Yeah. And somebody might argue, like, well, it kind of looks like she might be black, but it's like, if you have to do the kind of, right? Like, there's a problem here in terms of literally this representation. So, I don't know, like, going around in circles here. Yeah, so and people see this. So this, to me, that example also, just as the first one, this isn't simply about Cleveland Indian fans. These are young Native kids who see these images. This is, again, Afro-American black population who's seeing like, oh, not only now are they like co-opting our slogans, putting it on T-shirts, and then they're actually having white models actually represent these. Another one, again, somewhat quickly, and I'm doing these as what I'm calling kind of much more institutional examples that happening this summer heavily around the Asian American population. In Hollywood, Asian American actors are seeing few lead roles and pay discrepancies when they even land one. So they actually say that a very famous Korean actor. His credits include Math Olympian Dude, Chinese Man #2, Male Night Nurse, and his soon-to-be independent film, he is the Cinnabon Guy. Nerds, ninjas, geeks, and prostitutes. So this, this again isn't just in certain racial populations, but somewhat across the board, people are responding to that. The other way in which I wanted to give you a couple examples of current public discourse around racism is what I call intimacies. Racism intimacies, so they're much more concrete about people's lives. This young woman is an Asian American actress, and she changed her name. Her name when she was born was Chloe Wang. She changed her name to Chloe Bennett. And people have been literally now criticizing and coming after her about her legitimacy identifying as an Asian because she changed her name. And in a response, she says, changing my last name doesn't change the fact that my blood is half Chinese, that I lived in China, I speak Mandarin, or that I was culturally raised both American and Chinese. It means I had to pay the rent. And Hollywood is racist and wouldn't cast me with a last name that made them uncomfortable. I'm doing everything I can with the platform I have to make sure no one has to change their name again. So just for now, I got to get to work and leave. Okay, this is what she said. So kindly love, fuck off. Okay, so, well, I figure it's public discourse. You got to actually include what they're also saying. So that's one of the examples of what I call the intimacies of racism. I got two other ones that I want to give you here pretty quickly. And we're going to move on. I don't know if we're going to get any videos or not. So the second one I want to give you is a native Inuk man, which is actually up in Alaska. Young man, 14 years old, becomes a striker. And his mom posts on Facebook her pride at her son becoming a striker. In his traditional community, what it meant to become a striker, and very much kind of a rite of passage, is that he was out with his community and they were able to kill a whale for their community. So the striker is literally the idea, the harpoon, and you strike it and you kill the whale. And again, what's important about the killing of the whale, this is what they say, to our people, the bowhead is more than food. It keeps our families together. It keeps our children in school. It allows our elders to pass generational knowledge to our youth. It teaches us patience and perseverance. It teaches us generosity. It strengthens our community. It provides wisdom and insight. It gives us hope. It's our way of life. The spirit of the whale lives within each of us. So that's what literally they were acknowledging what it meant to them. When she posted this on Facebook, his mom first saw it, that this message from Paul Watson. Paul Watson is the founder of the environmental group Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. And he's star of an Animal Planet reality show called Whale Wars. He posted the story on his personal Facebook page, and along with that, a whole spew of vicious rants, obscenity-laden rage was directed at this young boy. Here's what Paul Watson said. "What the fuck, you 16-year-old murdering little bastard." This is Watson's post read. According to the story, he said, some 16-year-old kid is a freaking hero for snuffing out the life of this unique and self-aware, intelligent, social, sentiment being. But hey, it's okay because murdering whales is part of his culture, part of his tradition. I don't give a damn for his bullshit politically correct attitude that certain groups of people have a right to murder a whale. Again, he posted that on his personal Facebook page, which then meant the young man got all kinds of similar responses. His mom said he showed me his messages on his phone. They actually took the video post down. They were calling him names. They told him, "I will choke you on your blubber. You deserve to die. You need to harpoon your mom," and stuff like that. The messages kept coming. They tried to count them at first, but they stopped when it reached over 400. Chris, who was the young man, went through shock, anger, humiliation, and quit going to school after the harassment and threats came from around the world. The mother wrote then in a reply, "I think Chris cared more for me than he cared for himself, but he worried me because he went through a lot of grief after reading all those posts that Paul Watson shared and the Facebook messages that coming to his son from those followers." That's, again, and these stories, again, aren't unique. These are, again, the latest iterations. The second one I wanted to pull for you, actually the third one in terms of these intimacies, is the story of Michelle Jones. Anybody know her? Okay, we got one. DL, you want to offer any of your knowledge of her, or you want me? Okay. So Michelle Jones was accepted into Harvard. Little ring bell now? A couple people, right? She was accepted into Harvard. She literally was, then her admission was revoked. And the story of Michelle Jones continues that, we're kind of doing a little bit shifting, but it's pretty close. So again, Michelle Jones was accepted into Harvard. She says top Harvard officials typically rubber stamp departmental admissions decisions. In this case, the university's leadership, including the president, provost, and deans of the graduate school, reversed this one. So she was accepted, and then it gets reversed. And what her situation is that she was in jail. She actually was in jail. Her sentence was 50 years when she first was actually sentenced and then went into prison. She was in jail because of killing her son. Okay? There is, again, history here. What it says that in the straightforward rendition of what happened to Michelle, they just saw her literally as an ex-felon. If we truly understand her story, we have to look at literally the circumstances in which she came from, where she literally was homeless at 14. She was pregnant at 14. She was homeless. She had suffered abuse, rape, and other atrocities. So that was her history. She served. She got early release. She applied to Harvard from the prison. And only later did they actually then pull it. And here's the quote from one of the people that says, "We didn't have some preconceived idea about crucifying Michelle," said John Stafford, one of the 2 American Studies professors. "But frankly, we knew that anyone could just punch her crime into Google, and Fox News would probably say that the PC liberal Harvard gave $200,000 of funding to a child murderer who also happened to be a minority." He says, I mean, come on. And the author who's writing this is like, reading this quote, at least he's being candid, yet but these are not good reasons, or rather they aren't any reasons at all. These don't simply be attached to one man's poorly chosen words. It actually is what the administrators also said, that while top Harvard officials, again, rubber stamped these situations, that other folks had to actually intervene because, according to the emails and interviews, out of concern that her background would cause a backlash, again, to Harvard among rejected applicants and conservative news outlets or parents of students. That's why they said they pulled it. Again, a backlash against rejected applicants, conservative news outlets, and the author of this article even said, do you really think people are not going to go to Harvard because she's also been accepted? Yeah, it's in this situation where those intimacies of racism are present. So that's where, for me, that was the other story that I wanted to give you on that. They've pulled up now, and this is where we're getting into some of the gray matters of what I refer to, is the reality of, some people will even talk about this. This is where I'm referring to preaching to the choir, okay? That not all white people are bad, right? And these are these extreme cases, right? So part of it for me is I'm going to show you a clip from Muhammad Ali in terms of how he responds to that not all white people are racist. But I also want to make note too, often when I'm in these kind of situations, people are like, oh, you're just preaching to the choir, not all people are bad. You're just preaching to the choir. And I have to remind folks that the choir needs to practice. So that's why we're here practicing also. But we're also going to get a little bit of an insight from Muhammad if we can.
I want to do right, but there are so few. If 10,000 rattlesnakes was coming down that aisle now, and I had a door here I could shut, and in that 10,000, 1,000 meant right. 1,000 rattlesnakes didn't want to bite me. I knew they were good. Should I let all, hoping that 1,000 get together and form a shield? Or should I just close the door and stay safe?
I think that
you understand? The Viet Cong are not all bad, but America's still dropping bombs. In Hiroshima, Japan wasn't bad, but she still dropped the bomb. In Korea, they weren't bad, but they still dropped the bomb. So now I'm going to forget the 400 years of lynching and killing and raping and depriving my people of freedom, justice, and equality. The first fire, last high, the lowest of low, last respected. And I'm going to look at 2 or 3 white people who are trying to do right and don't see the other million trying to kill me. I'm not that big of a fool, and I'm not going to deny it. I believe everything.
Here. So this is where I'm getting into this idea of gray matters, though. One of it is, it's not about literally calling out like all white people, but there is a consciousness literally of what reality is, this idea of literally the racism that's existing in these intimacies, but all of these systematic ones. Again, the Indian streaking, the white people actually advertising and wearing black shirts. So those were the next places in which we wanted to actually move to in this discussion. And let's see what we can. Okay, so in this discussion, I wanted to look at and emphasize that in gray matters, this is where this language of gray matters does, is that in the United States around race and racism, we very much have created and support this white dichotomy of black and white. Here are the two races, black and white. Here's one of the ways in which this gets reinforced in terms of the Confederate monuments and those statues building, is that we gave you this map. Here's this relationship between the black-white binary. No, I'm not questioning this. There definitely is here. Yet, what I want to show you during this same time period, again, this same time period, why we need to make this gray, is that you had the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, you had the Immigration Act of 1924, you had the Japanese American Exclusion and Internment Act that happened between 1942 and 46. You had the Removal Act of American Indians in 1830. You had boarding schools that started in 1887 and were going actively until the 1970s. You have the American Indian Relocation Act, literally relocating Native people in 1956, the Bursary Program, 1942, the National Farm Labor Union, 1940s, 1950s, Way versus Road, 1971. All of those are still in that same timeline. It's this timeline that they're also in. So that's where, again, the black-white dichotomy just gives you this picture of just that relationship. And these were just a few. Like, there's plenty of others that are demonstrating to the number of things that are also happening in between, on Asian populations, Native populations, Latino populations. And then, like I said, whiteness is also about gender. So I felt like it was also important to understand during that time period, this is when you're even fighting for those rights. That's the grain that we need to do and move outside of that black-white dichotomy. And in this, I want us to then question. This is when we're looking at that grain of literally how we attend to things, we want to then look at how do you propose the American dream? How many of you heard this? Like, if you work hard, you will achieve, right? You've heard that. How many of you know people who have worked their butts off, right? But it's not there. You know, and that's that stuff of the grain, is that we have to get rid of this rhetoric that somehow if you work hard, then it's achievable. It's like we all know people who literally have even died younger because they have worked and worked and worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. They've worked literally in all kinds of occupations. And this idea that the American dream is here because people are here to make a better life, the grain of this, the research tells us people are here because they've been pushed here. People are here because they've been pulled here. It isn't simply making a better life. It's that I have to go someplace because my homeland now, I can't literally, there's no water. Or it's polluted. Or it's deforested. Or in some sections right now, it's actually underwater. Right? So these are those things where when we look at the grain, what I'm talking about is you have to take some of these kind of colloquial adages that have been put forth to us and really see what's underneath that. I know too many people have worked really hard and it's not there, you know? Plenty of people who, yeah, they want to make a better life. Nobody's saying that that's not there, but if we're discounting literally those histories in which they're coming from, those locations in which they're coming from, we're not doing the work that we need to do. So that's part of this work in which we are looking at today. All right, gotta like catch up on my slides here now. So this takes us into then, I think the grain in which we've also need to recognize is white nationalism. You know, so to me, one of the things that's striking about this is the picture that in some ways was celebrated in Charlottesville in white nationalism. Here is where you actually have that white supremacy in relationship between white nationalism. I'm pulling this up very specifically because I want us to pay attention to. This is a quote. So this is the question that was given by an interviewer. Person who is speaking is a ex-white nationalist. Actually, he identifies as an ex-Nazi. Okay? And this is why he says this happens. I think ultimately people become extremists not necessarily because of the ideology. I think that the ideology is simply a vehicle to be violent, right? I believe that people become racialized or radicalized or extremists because they're searching for three fundamental human needs: identity, community, and sense of purpose. Okay, these are the three things that they're searching for. And this is how they seek it. Because what I think is missing in this interview is that the type of identity, community, and sense of purpose that they're seeking is rooted, again, in white nationalism, which is rooted in white privilege. So these men are seeking entitlement. They're feeling a loss of community. They're feeling a threat to their identity because they're used to having privilege. They're used to literally having anything that they want. They had a sense of purpose. Okay, that sense of purpose absolutely can be eroded because of the economic shift in which we've undergone in this country, that literally workers in large capacity don't have identity with their work anymore. But that isn't about immigration. That literally is economics in terms of exportation, mechanization of literally goods and products, right? So what I thought was striking on this interview is I get that they're seeking identity, community, and sense of purpose. But if this is the way to achieve that, what is the identity that you're seeking when this is what I need to actually perform? What is that? I can guarantee you they feel a sense of kind of, brotherly love, right? Community here. But in this capacity? So we have to look at, I'm not saying that there's a false notion of identity, sense of purpose, and community. It's that if that's what they're looking for, that recreation of literally that white supremacy, the privilege and entitlement, and some of those things, that's where we end up literally coming to the situations in which we have now. So that's the first issue of graying and gray matters. We have to then look beyond how is it that black and white dichotomy is set up, and then interrogate whiteness. The second one here in terms of gray matters, I have three. The second one was that at times with our work, we have to be very specific and intentional about what we seek to address. So Black Lives Matter is a necessary focus. What you get in resistance to this at times is literally the all lives matter, walking over here, the bumper sticker, blue lives matter. And that again is because it's centered back on whiteness versus understanding that this necessity in naming and Black Lives Matter comes very specifically from knowledge and research that we have of the disproportionate amount of black lives that are being killed through police brutality. So that's the second point I want to get to. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I think that there's been some fair amount on that. Yet I'm trying to make this connection between our actions, the gray matters of what we do or how we understand things, is the grain, which at times means you got to focus. There's going to be specific things that we need to focus on, and it isn't about everybody and all people having to be at the party. In this, we have to resist this fighting amongst ourselves. And I know it might sound kind of a little loose or trite in terms of making that argument, yet I worry about this because this has been one of our trends where we're like, well, whose lives matter? Native lives matter, black lives matter. And part of this resistance is that we have to resist the whiteness because the whiteness has said, here, fight amongst yourselves. And then the most striking kind of byproduct of colonialism is that we fight amongst ourselves for the minimal resources that are out there. And we do at some level have to engage in that resistance. So that was, again, the second part of the Gray Lives Matter. I want to see if we can do this in the next video. Was that, well, we're not there quite there, it's coming up. But we're making visible then in this discussion whiteness. You're making visible white supremacy. And this is part of what we make visible, is this switch. So there's this quote that the other 90% think that all jobs are being stolen by illegal immigrants. Absolutely impossible. They are intentionally hiring somebody that they can underpay for more profit. This is what you make visible. This is literally that gray matter of what we flip. That we don't have an immigration problem, we have a morality problem regarding business owners taking advantage of people and pushing onto those being taken advantage of. Think about this. How often do you hear that? It isn't about literally immigrants that are stealing jobs, but there's an intentional hiring of people that they can underpay for profit. So this is one of those at times where people are like, you hear this. This is one of the, I want people to eliminate out of your rhetoric, like, well, they're doing the jobs nobody else will do. Get that shit out of get it out. because that doesn't allow humanity. This is about humanity and really then addressing whiteness, addressing white supremacy that are creating these problems versus literally blaming that issue. So that's an example of what we're talking about in that kind of work. Also, then further in whiteness, I wanted to, as Louise has said, as I also work in the Women's Studies department, I want to show us what we need to do in terms of making visible whiteness. So again, this was a recent word speech.
Me, out of the blue, I'm the ugliest girl I know.
That's her daughter said that.
And I said, huh? And she was like, yeah, I look like a boy with long hair. And my brain went to, oh my God, you're 6. Where is this coming from? Who said this? Can I kick a 6-year-old's ass? Like, what? So I went home, and I made a PowerPoint presentation for her. And in that presentation were androgynous rock stars and artists that live their truth, are probably made fun of every day of their life, and carry on and wave their flag and inspire the rest of us. And these are artists like Michael Jackson and David Bowie and Freddie Mercury and Annie Lennox and Prince and Janis Joplin and George Michael, Elton John, so many artists. Her eyes glazed over. But then I said, I really want to know why you feel this way about yourself. She said, well, I look like a boy. And I said, well, what do you think I look like? And she said, well, you're beautiful. And I was like, well, thanks. But I said, when people make fun of me, that's what they use. They say that I look like a boy, or I'm too masculine, or I have too many opinions, my body is too strong. And I said to her, I said, do you see me growing my hair? She said, no, Mama. I said, do you see me changing my body? No, Mama. Do you see me changing the way I present myself to the world? No, Mama. Do you see me selling out arenas all over the world? Yes, Mama. Okay. So, baby girl, we don't change. We take the gravel in the shell and we make a pearl. And we help other people to change so that they can see more kinds of beauty. All of you, thank you for being your true selves and for lighting the way for us. I'm so inspired by you guys. Keep doing it. Keep shining for the rest of us to see. And you, my darling girl, are beautiful. And I love you. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Where's the PowerPoint? Where I was transitioning with this particular video was, one, is I want us to understand how those issues that her little daughter is dealing with in terms of body and beauty come from whiteness, okay? That's where I'm transitioning, of making sure that we're marking that expectation literally upon women in certain ways in which they're supposed to look at even at 6, okay? And whether or not she has space to literally exist in there is what Pink was actually attending to. I use that also because the last part of the gray matters is what I want to focus on is how people are using their voice to attend to these issues. Because just as much as we have identity with race and we have identity again with gender, there are ways in which there's an active involvement from a number of populations that are actually engaged in disrupting the expectations. So that's the third area that I'm looking at of the gray matters. You disrupt those expectations of how, as people who have racialized identities and identities that are intersectional, including gender and sexuality, how is it that we are engaging in that narrative of what we seek to be seen as and actually live as? So I think we're just, one more. So to me, this was one of the slides, again, very recently that was accessible in the public discourse that I really do believe is calling out to some extent, how do we disrupt expectations? And this isn't photoshopped. This is actually a real, it's not a picture, but it's a cardboard illustration by artist that has been placed up on the wall, okay? So this is real. And I think that one of the things that was striking about this too is that in this work, the fellow artist, another artist that actually was part of this collective group, has won an award, yet has been denied entry into the United States to even accept the award. Okay? But this is a way in which it's one of those things to me also is that at times, whether it's students or the people's like, oh, what do we do? How do we fix things? It's do anything, do something. And I felt like this image is one of those things that we do. We disrupt those expectations that have been presented to us to this. There was a recent article that actually stated, does protesting matter? And in this article, the framing of does protesting matter has been situated to this idea that if there is protest, we should see tangible outcomes and results. And that if you didn't have those tangible outcomes and results, then protesting must be this kind of innocuous thing that makes no difference anymore. Yet I think that that's, again, a whiteness interpretation of what happens when you engage in protest and how do we understand protesting. And this is actually an image a couple years ago, Ferguson, where it became viral of this gentleman, Edward, who goes by Skeeta Crawford, of him throwing a canister. It became iconic. Part of it was iconic also was his T-shirt here. We do the research that actually understands what he is doing with that canister is throwing it back at the police who had thrown it at them where there was a bunch of kids standing. He was protecting the children. So this is one of those, does protesting matter? Well, if all you see is somebody throwing a canister and you don't have the context to it and understand that what they're doing here is actually saving and protecting people because this was thrown by the police at them. It's a similar kind of image that was going on, particularly around the Baltimore, what I actually refer to as civil disobedience versus riots. There you go, make that switch, right? Of an Afro-American woman who literally was like forcibly dragging her son away. And everybody's like, well, this is the black moms that we need. And then you go talk to her and she's like, well, I was forcibly taking my son away from there because I didn't want him to be next. That's the research that we need to do in this work that actually illustrates that protesting does matter. This one was much more recent and also another one that was going around in the public discourse. And this one was also from Charlottesville, so fairly couple months ago. And they said, 2 men extend weapons. One is a Confederate flag furled, and the other is an aerosol can modified to eject fire. And it is definitely a very striking juxtaposition, particularly kind of almost the very calmness of the Afro-American man who's doing this. This is an analysis. This is the research we do. We give voice to some of these images, and here's what one of the, actually they're citing Cornel West and a couple other people here, but the black man is wielding what the black theologian James Caan quoted the prophet Jeremiah might call the burning fire shut up in my bones. What James Baldwin has identified as the fire next time. So think about this. Think about that Afro-American man holding that. It is a pose that upsets a desire for docility. Remember, this is supposed to be the reaction to racism, is be docile. It's not that bad, It upsets that desire for docility. It's a rebuke to the slogans such as, this is not us, or love not hate, or even love wins. This graceful man has appropriated not only the flames of white supremacist bigotry, but also the debauched rhetorical fire of Trump, who gloated earlier this week that he would respond to a foreign threat with fire and fury. And end quote, the resistance has fire too. People are engaged. People are seeking it. And I think for me what was important about that picture and these quotes is there's this way in which, again, in some of that popular discourse, it's the thugs, it's the looters, it's this kind of language that is getting thrown upon these populations. Yet, with that eye of understanding the locations in which people are participating in this, we will understand that the resistance has fire too. I want to give just a little bit more context to why I'm using this as the closing part. Does protesting matter? I think we also have to understand the context of what the tenor of protesting is. In the 1960s, this was the chant. Give peace a chance, right? Even Vietnam War, give peace a chance. Literally, in the last couple of years, the chant is hands up, don't shoot. A certain way, you need to have that set with you in terms of this idea that we're post-racial, It's like, this is what we're asking. You're showing kids, teaching kids, hands up, don't shoot. This happened this week. So at St. Louis, there actually was some protesting also around a potential taking down of a Confederate statue. This is what the police said. The police are chanting this. Whose street? Our street. The police are chanting this as they're clearing protesters from the space. The police are. So I think it's important to then focus on literally, well, what are people, this is the nature of what's going on right now. And again, not just in our literatures in which we're doing the research to explain it, but this is in the streets. This is what's on the ground. But I want to end real quickly with a couple nods, again, to some other groups that are doing very active work in this capacity, being attentive to our time. So I Don't Know More movement actually is one that had started very particularly to look at the murdered and invisibility of murdered and missing Indigenous women. This has now gone global, so stuff works. People are actually doing this engagement. I want to give you this example of, this is a picture from the Women's March. And part of where I wanted to give you this example is because I remember seeing this image. And I will be more than truthful and admit to you that pretty much most of my life I've really hated the color pink, okay? But when I saw that, I'm like, dang, pink got a little reclamation, right? So what do we see and how do we interpret what we see? I think something like this is one of those things that we want to capture. We want to capture, you know, to me, this iconic photo that happened at Standing Rock, which more and more people have known about, and the iconic photo of literally this person on this horse, but look at what we're up against. So we do this work because these are the things in which we are confronted with. And then again, even more recently, here's one of the students from San Francisco, I think this one was San Francisco, and literally, he is standing in protest. And these are the things in which we are seeking to not only build upon, but also record and also make reference to in the work that we want for the work on racial justice. So I've got 3 last things for you in terms of closing moments. Last video. Aziz Ansari, who is, actually, I don't want to ruin it totally because she makes this reference to it in the little, it's like a minute clip here of this award. So Aziz Ansari and Lena, there you go, just won for Outstanding Comedy Series. And again, I clipped it. That's good, Danny. You can actually start there. Outstanding Writing in Comedy Series.
The story and allowing me to share with the world. I love you, Ma. Thank you, Aziz, for pushing me to go write this, bro. Now we're standing here. I love you forever. Thank you and Alan for creating a show like Master of None where we can tell stories like this. Thank you, Netflix and Universal, for creating a beautiful playground for us to play on and shine. Ted and Cindy, we love you. Melina, you are magic. Angela, you are a legend. Kim, you are a force. Thank you for making this episode so special. To my girlfriend, I love you more than life itself. Alana, my team, my chosen family, I love y'all. And last but certainly not least, my LGBTQIA family. I see each and every one of you. The things that make us different, those are our superpowers. Every day when you walk out the door, put on your imaginary cape and go out there and conquer the world. Because the world would not be as beautiful as it is if we weren't in it. And for everybody out there that showed us so much love for this episode, thank you for embracing a little Indian boy from South Carolina and a little queer black girl from the south side of Chicago. We appreciate it more than you could ever know. Thank you, Academy, for this. We love y'all. God bless y'all.
Again, I wanted to do that ending, and it's not so much that I want to end on just the upper kind of thing, you know, I know it's happy kind of stuff, but it's about what are the voices out there and how are people literally acknowledging what's happening in their lives. Shonda Rhimes was, again, fairly well-known, a screenwriter or television. She does Grey's Anatomy, the murder one, and on a bunch of those. What she said actually also, though, was that this was embarrassing, that like we're just finally having the first, which I think is an important call out. finally having the first Afro-American woman who wins for the screenwriting, finally, you know, so I think that that's a very important call out. I do want to say that, I don't know how many of you picked up and catch when she actually is doing her acceptance speech, she's like, I want to reclaim my time. That's actually a nod to Maxine Waters, which is one of our congressional representatives who in a situation literally had to reclaim her time from a what. Yeah, it's actually pretty cool when you see these things connect, that's very specific language that was used during congressional hearings that Maxine Waters reclaimed her time on. So this is where I want to end, 2 last points. This was actually also during the Women's March. And what I'm giving you this picture for, not only because it's really cute kind of thing, right? But I actually am giving it to you as this kind of symbolic call to you that I want you to show up, okay? I want you to show up. If you don't even know what to write on the board, if you don't know what to say in terms of the thing in which you want to claim, still show up. Here's the thing that I also want you to show up at home, show up in your department, show up in your class. I don't mean just show up at a protest. Show up. This is what I think this embodies for me, is show up in all these different ways. Be there, not just at the protest. We need you in all these everyday kind of ways that we can confront some of the things in which we're seeking to confront. And to me, seriously? Okay. This is why we show up. This is actually a mural that is now up in Duluth, Minnesota. Just got finished this summer. For me, showing up gives us this. Know that this mural was actually painted by a collective of peoples, that they actually had to know what one another was doing, that they actually had conversations. They came together to collaboratively take, it's actually a full side of a building, to give this image to a space that now overlooks the traditional lands of the peoples that actually, the Ojibwe are one of them, that painted this. I want you to take that imagery as a reminder of when we show up, when we work collectively, we're working to produce this that represents us. This is the identity, community, and sense of purpose that we have a chance to do that confronts those expectations of whiteness of ourselves. So that was the last thing I wanted to give you. I know we're really kind of on time here. Very, very last, just kind of FYI, there's our contact information in terms of the things in which we're seeking to do. We now have an email address and a website and a phone number. If you want to know the hoops to get through all of that. So thank you very much for your time. That's the end of this official presentation. Definitely will take questions, but I'm also sensitive to people's times. We got food here, and we also have a reception time to continue. So there we go.